Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to replace the catalytic converter and the secondary oxygen sensor on a Honda S2000. The catalytic converter and consequently the secondary oxygen sensor failed on my club racer after 145,000 miles, so I'm replacing mine with a used OEM catalytic converter and an oxygen sensor purchased from eBay. Before you start this process, you'll want to make sure that the car has cooled off. Once the car is cooled off, get the car on jack stands. First, you want to remove the secondary oxygen sensor to get it out of the way. Follow the oxygen sensor wiring harness from the catalytic converter to the driver's side of the transmission. Disconnect the secondary oxygen sensor connector and undo the two clips holding the wiring harness to the transmission. Then use a 22mm wrench or an offset oxygen sensor socket to remove the oxygen sensor. Begin removing the catalytic converter by removing the three nuts holding the catalytic converter to the exhaust. You'll want to spray some penetrating oil on the nuts as they commonly rust. Once the penetrating oil has done its job, use a 14mm socket to remove the three nuts. An impact gun can come in handy here. Now you'll want to remove the two spring bolts holding the catalytic converter to the exhaust manifold. Again, these bolts commonly rust, so use some penetrating oil on them if necessary. Use a 12mm wrench to hold the spring bolt head and then use a 12mm deep socket with a ratchet to remove the nut from the spring bolt. At this point, you can replace the catalytic converter. To remove the catalytic converter, push the catalytic converter towards the passenger side of the car to generate clearance so that the catalytic converter studs are free from the exhaust. At this point, the catalytic converter should drop right down. Installation is the reverse of the removal. Insert the new catalytic converter onto the exhaust manifold first and then line up the studs with the exhaust. Next, reinstall the two spring bolts holding the catalytic converter to the exhaust manifold. Use a 12mm wrench to hold the spring bolt head and then use a 12mm deep socket with a ratchet to tighten the nuts attached to the spring bolt. Alternate between the two nuts as you tighten them to ensure an even fit. Torque them to 16 foot-pounds. Use a 14mm socket to reinstall the three nuts holding the catalytic converter to the exhaust. Torque them to 25 foot-pounds. Finally, you'll want to reinstall a secondary oxygen sensor. Use a 22mm wrench or an offset oxygen sensor socket to install the oxygen sensor to the catalytic converter. Torque it to 33 foot-pounds. Then take the wiring harness and attach the two clips holding the wiring harness to the transmission. Lastly, reconnect the secondary oxygen sensor connector. Make sure to reconnect the connector with the release tab held down so that it will be fully seated. In order to finish this job, all you have to do is get the car back down to the ground. And that's it. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, give this video a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. As always, leave a comment down below for a DIY you'd like to see in the future.